Okay, this slideshow is going to be about the Black Death, the bubonic plague during the Middle Ages. At the end, there's a writing assignment, so I wanted to review some of the things that we've learned about the bubonic plague already. The flea regurgitates the blood from the rat into the human, infecting the human. The rat dies, the human dies. The flea lives a long and happy life. Nature has a morbid sense of humor. And that quote is from a professor at Boise State University, and it sort of outlines how the disease was spread. Fleas were carriers of the disease. They didn't get the disease, but they could carry it from person to person or from an animal like a rat to people. The Black Death made its tour of Europe from the years 1347 to about 1351 when it finally died out. 1347, traders arrive in Italy carrying the bubonic plague from China. China is where this disease started. If you remember from our music video, they talked about the Mongols in China who were in a battle with the Italian traders in Kaffa, a city called Kaffa, and they were hurling the dead bodies of people that had died from the disease at their enemies to try to get them to become sick and die. The disease was carried by fleas on black rats. And remember, it's not the rats that were biting people and infecting them. It was the fleas, those little teeny tiny insects that were on the rats that would then jump onto people, bite them, and infect them. Once bitten, the disease could pass from person to person, so it was communicable if somebody coughed on you or sneezed or you shared a drink with them. A year later, in 1348, the disease had spread all the way across Europe to England. And this map shows how the disease spread. The red line represents the trade routes that the traders who were bringing silk and spices from China used. You can see how they moved all throughout the Mediterranean, out into the Atlantic Ocean, up along the coast of Europe. And so as they were traveling, not aware that they were sick sometimes, they were taking the disease with them. Some reasons why this disease took hold. Where there's garbage, there are rats. Rats love garbage. If you ever want to see a rat, just go to a local garbage dump or go downtown Chicago and go in an alleyway behind a restaurant where there's garbage cans and you'll find rats. And as we've talked about before, the Middle Ages was a pretty dirty place. There was garbage everywhere. So rats were everywhere. People didn't think too much of it and didn't realize that the fleas that were on these rats were deadly. Back in these times, people didn't bathe or clean their clothes. We discussed that after the fall of the Roman Empire, people in Europe had forgotten many of the things that they had learned. So things like bathing every day, as most people did during the time of the Roman Empire, went by the wayside. People didn't wash their clothing. And again, these are things that allow fleas to have a place to live. And any of you that have ever washed your dog, when your dog has fleas, you know that the fleas jump off your dog as soon as you start washing them down. But since people weren't taking baths or cleaning their clothes, fleas had free reign. During the Middle Ages, people shared a bed with many other people in their family. They might sleep in the bed at night and somebody else slept there during the day. And again, if they're not going to be taking baths or cleaning their clothing, they're probably not cleaning their bedding either. So it just gave fleas another chance, another place to be, and then they could get on somebody else. When people did get the Black Death, 2/3 of those who got the disease died. So if you got sick, you had about a 67% chance of passing away. And over a 5-year period, 1/3, at least 1/3, that's a minimum, of the people of Europe died. Some estimates are as many as 2/3 of the people of Europe died. And our estimates are that between 25 and 33 million people passed away in a 5-year period because of the Black Death. We don't know for sure because record keeping back in those times in the Middle Ages wasn't as advanced as it is now. People didn't have babies at hospitals, they had babies at home. We've talked before about how the priests of the local church would try to keep track of birth records and death records and things like that, but back in those times it's hard to tell exactly how many people were alive before the Black Death and how many were dead afterwards, or how many died during. So our estimates are between 25 and 33 million people. This is a picture of what a doctor back in those times would look like, and I don't know about you, but I wouldn't have a lot of faith in this doctor, which is one of the reasons why they didn't ever come up with a cure. The mask that he's wearing, the bird mask, was to keep him, they thought it would keep them from becoming sick. They would fill the beak with good smelling herbs because the smell of death was everywhere during this time. The disease itself manifested itself in swollen glands in the neck, the armpit, and groin. Flea bites, if an infected flea bit you The flea bite where you were bit would be red at first, then turn purple, then black, hence the name the Black Death. Most victims died 4 to 7 days after they got the infection. So once you got sick, you didn't live very long, unfortunately. Fever, headaches, vomiting, nausea were all symptoms of this disease, very much like when you get the flu nowadays, except much, much worse. And this person doesn't actually have the bubonic plague. This is a makeup kit that teachers or actors can put on to show what it would have looked like. But you can see the black spots on her cheeks. You can see the swollen gland in her neck. You can see all the red blotches and purplish blotches all over her face. The after effects of the Black Death. Even though this was a tremendous tragedy in the Middle Ages, it also was something that, after it was all said and done, helped to improve life in Europe. Before the plague, Europe was overpopulated, underfed, and underpaid. There were way too many people for the amount of food that they could produce on the land, and there were way too few jobs for the people that were alive. After the plague, there was food and work for everybody, and life improved for those who survived. So even though it was an awful, awful event, things got better. For those people that did survive, things got better. Another after effect of the plague is that people lost their faith in the church and in God, when it's not hard to understand why. When you see people dying all around you, you start to question your faith and what you believe in. People also wanted someone to blame. It's kind of human nature, unfortunately, that people, when things go bad, they want to blame someone else. So sometimes they persecuted the Jews or the gypsies or the lepers, people that were a little bit different from the mainstream. And normally people like to blame people that are different from themselves when bad times befall them. So it's just another example of people being persecuted for something that they didn't do. And here's the writing prompt. This is the assignment for today, which is Monday, December 5th. So if you're absent from school today, this is the writing prompt assignment that we had. Imagine you are living during the Middle Ages and the Black Death has arrived in your village. Write a letter to a friend in another town telling them about this terrible plague. How does it affect people? How is it spread? What is the reaction of the community? And how do you feel about it? Your writing should be 3 paragraphs, an introductory paragraph, the body of your paper, and the conclusion. Please use proper punctuation, spelling, and grammar. And you can always improve your writing by using lots of descriptive words, lots of adjectives and adverbs. Make sure your writing is in the form of a letter. It should begin Dear John or Dear Susie or Dear Sally, whatever name you're going to make up for the person that you're writing to. And make sure you end it with love or take care or stay out of town and your name.